If you do enjoy, please subscribe. Story 1. My mother-in-law had a GPS tracker hidden in my toddler's car seat for 6 months because she did not trust my driving. I only found it when the battery pack started vibrating against a plastic shell while we were on the highway. When I confronted her, she did not even blink or apologize. She just told me that as the matriarch, it was her right to know the exact coordinates of her legacy at all times. Story 2. My father once called a secret family meeting while I was away at college, just to vote on whether or not I was allowed to keep my current girlfriend. He actually printed out a formal agenda with a list of her flaws like her major, and the fact that her parents are divorced. They held a literal silent ballot on a Sunday afternoon in the dining room. I came home for break and found a typed letter on my pillow stating that the family council had reached a verdict and I had 30 days to terminate the relationship or lose my tuition funding. He acted like he was a CEO, firing an underperforming intern instead of a dad destroying his son's happiness. It was the most cold and calculated thing I have ever witnessed. I tried to argue, but he just kept pointing at the physical paper and saying the results were final and binding. Story 3. I caught my sister trying to forge my signature on a power of attorney form because she decided I was too depressed to manage my own bank account after a breakup. She was not even trying to steal the money for herself. She just wanted to be the one who approved every single purchase I made so she could force me to buy the clothes and food she liked. Story 4. When I got engaged, my mother demanded the login information for my wedding registry so she could audit the items we picked. I told her no, and she spent the next 3 days calling every single one of my bridesmaids to tell them I was having a mental breakdown. She eventually called the store pretending to be me and managed to delete every single item we had chosen. She replaced them with fine china patterns from the 80s that she personally preferred. When I saw the registry was empty, I called her in tears, and she calmly told me that she was just correcting my poor taste before I embarrassed the family. She insisted that since she was paying for the flowers, she had full creative control over my entire future household. It was a total power move designed to show me that I would never truly be an adult in her eyes. I had to password protect every single vendor just to make it to the wedding day without her cancelling the venue or the cake. Story 5. My brother once cut the brake lines on my bike because I refused to let him borrow my car for a date. He stood on the porch and watched me walk out to the garage with this smug look on his face. He actually told me that if I was not going to be a team player, then I did not deserve to have any form of transportation at all. Story 6. My grandmother holds a literal audition every year for who gets to host Thanksgiving, and it is the most toxic thing I have ever seen. You have to submit a full 3-course menu and a seating chart to her by October 1st, or you are automatically disqualified from the rotation. Last year, my aunt forgot to list the brand of butter she was using, and my grandmother sent a mass email to 30 people saying the holiday was cancelled due to incompetence. She then hosted it at her house and made my aunt sit at a card table in the hallway as a punishment for her lack of attention to detail. Nobody stood up to her because she has a massive inheritance that she dangles over everyone's heads like a carrot. She spends the entire meal critiquing the way people chew and making us thank her for the privilege of being in her presence. If you do not look happy enough while she is insulting you, she writes a note in a little black book she keeps by her plate. Story 7. I found out my dad was paying my boss a monthly stipend to keep me in a junior position, so I would not have enough money to move out of his house. My boss eventually felt guilty and showed me the checks that my dad was sending to the office every month. He wanted me stuck in that spare bedroom forever, so he would always have someone to yell at when he was bored. Story 8. My older sister decided that my wedding dress was too revealing, so she snuck into the bridal suite while I was in the bathroom and poured red wine down the front of it. She did not even try to hide it or act like it was an accident. She just stood there with the empty glass and told me that she was saving my soul from making a public spectacle of myself. I had to get married in a borrowed bridesmaid dress that was 3 sizes too big while she sat in the front row, smiling like she had done me a massive favor. She later told my husband that he should thank her for ensuring his wife looked modest for the photos. Story 9. My uncle once took my car keys and threw them into a storm drain because I told him I was too tired to drive him to the airport at 3 a.m. He told me that family means being available 24 hours a day, and if I could not handle that responsibility, then I did not need a vehicle. I had to pay a locksmith $200 just to get to work the next morning. Story 10. When I was 22, my mother called the police and reported my car as stolen because I stayed out past midnight without answering her texts. I got pulled over by 3 squad cars and had to sit on the curb in handcuffs while they sorted out that the car was actually in my name. When I got home, she was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea and told me that she hoped I learned my lesson about communication. She genuinely believed that traumatizing me with a police encounter was a valid parenting tool to ensure I never ignored her again. I moved out the next week, and she tried to file a missing persons report before I even reached the city limits. She told the dispatcher that I was being kidnapped by my own shadow just to get them to track my phone. It was a level of control that I still have nightmares about years later. I married into a family where the grandmother treated every holiday like a hostile corporate takeover. The first Thanksgiving I attended, she walked into my kitchen, opened every cabinet without asking, and announced that my plates were embarrassing for guests of her caliber. When I said we had already cooked, she unplugged the slow cooker and said, "We're starting over, this smells poor." My husband tried to step in, and she pointed at him and said, "I did not raise you to take orders from your wife." Then she sat at the head of our table and rewrote the seating chart, so her side of the family faced the window and mine faced the wall because they weren't prepared for sunlight. When dinner finally started, she criticized every bite out loud and told my sister she was chewing with anxiety. The breaking point was when she told our 5-year-old that children should be seen, not emotionally acknowledged, and tried to send him to eat alone in the hallway. I stood up, took her plate, and told her the meal was over for her. She said I was committing elder abuse. I said, "No, I'm committing boundary setting," and walked her to the door while the rest of the family sat in stunned silence. She spent the next year telling relatives I threw her out because she was too honest for modern women. Story 11. My mother once called my HR department and tried to resign on my behalf because she thought my commute was too long. She actually put on a professional voice and told them that I was too shy to quit myself, but that the stress was ruining our family bond. I walked into my office on a Monday morning, and my boss asked why I was there if I had quit on Friday afternoon. When I confronted her, she just shrugged and said that she was tired of me being tired. She truly believed that she had the right to end my career because it inconvenienced her weekend brunch schedule. Story 12. I was 25 years old when I realized my dad had been intercepting my mail for years to hide the fact that I had been accepted into a prestigious art school in another state. He wanted me to stay local and work for his construction company, so he just threw the acceptance letters in the trash and told me I must have been rejected. I found the hidden folder in his safe years later, while looking for my birth certificate. When I screamed at him, he just stared me down and said that he saved me from a lifetime of being a starving artist. He felt absolutely no guilt for stealing my entire future, because it meant he had a free bookkeeper for his business. My aunt refused to let anyone eat at Christmas dinner until we all stood up and gave a 5-minute speech about why she was the most important member of the family. Story 14. My mother-in-law had a spare key to our house and used to sneak in while we were at work to rearrange our furniture. I would come home and find the couch on the opposite wall or the entire kitchen pantry reorganized because she decided my layout was unbalanced. One day, I changed the locks and she literally tried to kick the front door down while screaming that I was kidnapping her son. She called the police and told them that I was a dangerous squatter who had locked the rightful owners out of the property. When the officers arrived, she showed them her old key and demanded they arrest me for changing the cylinders without her permission. She actually told the cop that she was the one who paid for the wedding, so the house was technically hers by blood right. I had to show the deed to my own home just to get the police to tell her to leave. Even then, she stood on the sidewalk for 2 hours, shouting that I was a controlling monster who was isolating her boy. Story 15. My sister once cancelled my dental appointment and rescheduled it for herself because she decided her teeth were more of a priority than my wisdom tooth pain. Story 16. I caught my grandfather going through my trash bags in the garage because he wanted to see if I was buying any brands he did not approve of. He had a list of companies he was boycotting, and he told me that if he found one more box of that trash cereal, he would write me out of his will. He was not even joking. He sat me down and made me sign a contract stating that I would only purchase groceries from his approved vendor list. He treated a box of crackers like a betrayal of the family legacy. It was completely unhinged, but he had the money, so my parents just told me to go along with it to keep the peace. Story 17. When my brother found out I was moving to a new city, he called my new landlord and told him that I was a known drug dealer just so the lease would get cancelled. Story 18. My mom used to call me at 3 a.m. every single night just to make sure I was not partying or living a life of sin while I was away at my first job. If I did not answer within 2 rings, she would call the local police for a welfare check and tell them I had mentioned feeling suicidal. I would wake up to flashlights in my window and officers banging on my door while she sat at home waiting for them to call her back. She told me that if I did not want the police at my house, I should just pick up the phone when my mother calls. It was a pure power play to ensure I never had a single night of peace without her permission. She eventually got a warning from the precinct for abusing the emergency system, and she blamed me for ruining her reputation with the local law enforcement. Story 19. My cousin once stole my passport the day before my honeymoon because she was jealous that she had never been to Europe. She told me she would give it back only if I agreed to pay for her to come with us. Story 20. My father would hide my car battery every time he felt like I was spending too much time with my friends. I would go to leave for a movie, and the engine would not even click because the entire battery was sitting in his locked tool chest in the basement. He would just sit in his recliner and say, "I guess the universe wants you to stay home and talk to your father tonight." He acted like it was some divine intervention instead of him literally sabotaging my property to force me into a conversation. If I got angry, he would tell me that I was being unstable, and that was exactly why I should not be out driving anyway. It was a perfect circle of manipulation that kept me trapped in that house for way longer than I should have stayed. Story 21. My mother-in-law once hid a baby monitor inside a decorative silk plant she gave us as a housewarming gift. She spent weeks listening to our private conversations in the living room while we complained about her constant interference. When I finally found the cord tucked under the rug, she did not even try to deny it. She claimed she had to listen in because we were clearly plotting to keep her away from her future grandchildren. She told my husband that if we had nothing to hide, we should not be upset about her keeping tabs on our marriage. Story 22. I was halfway through my wedding reception when I realized my mother had pulled the DJ aside and told him to cancel the upbeat playlist I spent months creating. She replaced every single song with slow, depressing hymns and classical music because she decided my taste was too aggressive for a family event. When I tried to tell the DJ to switch it back, she grabbed the microphone and announced to the entire room that the bride was having a bridezilla moment and needed to calm down. She forced me into a corner and hissed that since she paid for the catering, she was the one who decided the atmosphere of the evening. I spent my own wedding dance floor, watching my friends stand around in awkward silence, while my mother smirked from the head table. She spent the rest of the night telling guests that she was just trying to bring a touch of class to a tacky situation. It was the ultimate way to show me that even on my biggest day, she was still the person in charge. Story 23. My dad once took my phone and changed my own contact name in his device to Disappointment, just so I would see it every time he called me. Story 24. My sister convinced our entire extended family that I had a secret gambling addiction, just so they would stop asking why I was not contributing more money to her business ventures. She told my parents that the reason I could not afford to loan her $5,000 was because I was blowing it all at the casino every weekend. I started getting staged interventions and get well cards from relatives I had not spoken to in years. When I showed my bank statements to my mom to prove it was a lie, she told me that I was probably just hiding the cash in a secret account. My sister had successfully poisoned the well so thoroughly that the truth did not even matter anymore. She just wanted to punish me for saying no to her, and she did it by destroying my reputation with every person I loved. Story 25. When I was 19, my grandfather made me sign a behavioral bond before he would let me sit at the table for Sunday dinner. Story 26. I caught my aunt trying to cancel my flight to a job interview in another state because she thought the position was beneath our family social standing. She had called the airline pretending to be my legal guardian and claimed there was a medical emergency that required me to stay home. When the airline called me to confirm the cancellation, I was absolutely stunned to hear her voice in the background coaching the representative on what to say. I confronted her, and she had the nerve to tell me that she was doing me a favor by preventing me from embarrassing the family with a blue-collar job. She truly believed that she had the right to sabotage my financial independence, just to maintain her own delusions of grandeur. I had to change all my security questions to things she could never guess, like the name of my actual favorite teacher instead of the one she liked. She still tells people that I stole that job from a more deserving candidate just to spite her. Story 27. My brother once locked me in the attic for 6 hours because I refused to do his laundry while he went out with his friends. He told me through the door that I could come out once I learned the value of sibling cooperation, and then he turned off the Wi-Fi so I could not even call for help. Story 28. My mother decided that my therapist was turning me against her, so she started showing up at the clinic and demanding to sit in on my private sessions. When the office staff told her she was not allowed back there, she sat in the waiting room and screamed at the top of her lungs that the doctor was kidnapping her child's mind. She did this 3 weeks in a row until my therapist had to gently suggest I find a new practice for my own safety. My mum then bragged about it at dinner, saying she had won and saved me from being brainwashed by a professional. She would rather I be miserable and under her thumb than healthy and independent. Story 29. My uncle once sold my vintage comic book collection while I was at work because he decided that grown men do not need hobbies that involve pictures. Story 30. My dad used to make me give him a daily report every night at dinner where I had to justify every single dollar I spent that day. Even when I was 21 and working a full-time job, he would demand to see my receipts and lecture me if I spent more than $5 on a lunch. One time, I bought a coffee without telling him, and he took my bedroom door off the hinges as a transparency penalty. He told me that if I wanted to have secrets about my finances, then I did not deserve to have any privacy in his house. I had to sleep in a room with a gaping hole in the wall for 2 weeks until I earned my door back by showing him my bank login. It was a level of control that made me feel like a prisoner in my own home, and he enjoyed every second of the power he held over me.